Hello and welcome to a comparison of the clone to the DNA. A few of you have noticed a general similarity in the overall ball reaction, and I have too, so we're going to take a look and see if they can coexist or if they're too similar to carry together. Before we get started, big shout out and thanks as always to Royal Crest Lanes. They're a big part of bringing these videos to you. All it takes is a text and we have everything we need. Also, my code ROSEDOLL10 will get you 10% off your order at checkout at CoolWick, and if you check the description, you'll find a bunch of helpful links and information, including our personal specs and links to buy each of these balls at Bowler's Mart. I do receive a 5% commission on all sales through the links. On paper, the DNA is an absolute monster. The new asymmetric supercoil core comes in at a 247 RG, an 053 differential, and an 023 intermediate differential, which makes it the strongest asymmetric core Storm has released in a long while. The new Exo Solid cover is supposed to be the new strongest cover they've ever made, but that's something I'm not really seeing. More on that later. The clone, meanwhile, features the cloned ET core, which has been slightly modified from the original ET core in the UFO and UFO Alert to strengthen it overall. The values for it are a 251 RG, an 056 differential, and an 016 intermediate differential. A little higher RG and diff and a moderate amount lower on the int diff between the cores for the DNA and the clone. The cover on the clone is the new medium strength Optitrax Solid formula, which is based on and feels very similar to their eTrax formula and its variants from balls like the Rubicon, Rubicon UC2, UFO Alert, RSTX2, and most recently the TNT. Now on paper, the DNA has a slightly stronger core, much stronger cover, so it should roll a little stronger, be firm on the back end, and hook a fair amount more overall. I'll play several shots of each to get you warmed up, and then we'll talk about it. So to first address the obvious, the clone isn't great with the shine, putting it mildly. Some shots look fine, then it pukes/gives up on others, just wildly inconsistent. Now this isn't the box shine for the clone. It does come shiny, but I did resurface and polish both of these balls myself prior to throwing them. Once I hit the clone with the 2000 pad though, we're in business. Whole different ball reaction. I was happy with where the DNA was at with the shine, so unfortunately I don't have any footage with surface to show you, but for the sake of the comparison, that isn't necessary and isn't really the point. What this does show you, though, is that the DNA handles the conditions just fine, while the clone isn't strong enough until surface is added, which I think accurately shows and reflects the strength difference. The weird thing is that the clone is heavier rolling and wants to slow down. While the DNA is extremely rolly, it's not heavy rolling or remotely chuggy, and it is much weaker overall than I expected it to be, but that's not a bad thing. I'm actually pretty stunned that I've heard absolutely zero about this ball. It's like nobody cares or even knows it exists. I think it's a pretty remarkable reaction. It reminds me a lot of something like the Reality, a little more stable and controllable. I featured that comparison in the DNA review, but it's the same idea. It's effective and usable strength. The DNA controls the lane extremely well, and the cover is strong enough to get positive traction and give you a firm, round drive into the pins, while the clone at the same surface doesn't quite have the cover traction to get it going despite the heavier rolling core slowing the ball down and giving it more time to react. Once again, don't confuse strength for board coverage. That's not something either one of these balls likes to do. Strength is getting traction and blending the lane, which the DNA does exceptionally well. These two balls shape remarkably similar. The DNA is a little cleaner and sharper, and it winds up very similarly to the Phase 2 down the lane. You can see it visibly gaining momentum and spinning faster and faster all the way down the lane, and that's due to that monster core really getting going. Now the unique thing about it is that asymmetric cores are typically more forward because they're generating all that torque. If you think about balls like the physics line, reality line, the halos, etc., they can be continuous if you want them to be or make them, but they're more naturally forward. They use the strength to get rolling early, the torque to be firm and consistent on the back end, but then the balls are generally more forward because of that. The DNA almost acts like a symmetric ball. I see a lot of the axiom in it, actually, just with the asymmetric torque to really control the mid lane and pick up down lane. I think Storm has made some real strides lately in making strong asymmetric cores that aren't forward and don't lock up or bog down, such as the Absolute, Eternity, and now the DNA and the Clone. The Clone does very similar things, just definitely a step down on traction, though it does start up earlier, but also hooks later. It's kind of odd to look at because, again, it looks like they're mostly doing the same things. Like on some of these shots, they look like the same ball in a different color, and other shots, it's like, oh wow, that's different. They feel a lot different than they look. I feel like the DNA is just easier down the lane. It feels like the cleaner, sharper one throwing them. I got into a bit of a mechanical funk after filming for the DNA and couldn't throw it for a while, but it's coming back out now. So I'm hoping to maybe get a better read on it or more information to have for the report card later. Sorry if this felt a little all over the place, but it looked all over the place, so it was really hard for me to pinpoint anything, lock it down, or come to any real conclusion beyond I like the DNA with the shine, the clone is definitely better with surface, and the DNA feels like the cleaner and sharper reaction, but also the stronger ball, while still not feeling near as strong as it should on paper. The clone, on the other hand, ends up feeling stronger than it should be on paper, so they're close-ish, but the clone sucks shiny and looks amazing with surface, so it's obviously the weaker ball. Ultimately, I don't know that you carry both, but if you run the DNA shiny and the clone with surface, you have a pretty nice combination. Or if you run them both with surface, they're going to get more separation, because even when I added surface to the clone, it and the DNA were still hooking the same amount. The DNA was just longer and sharper. I have a review up for the clone if you want a deeper look, as well as more comparisons to come. It will release with the Tour Dynamics on August 18th. Down in the description is a link to Bowler's Mart that will get one ordered for you, and of course don't forget my code ROSEDALL10 to get 10% off your order at checkout at CoolWick. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.